The evening of February 5th was like any other in the quiet enclave of Caprock Canyon Avenue. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across manicured lawns, a call came through to emergency services. Robert Kim, a respected member of the community, had reportedly succumbed to a natural death. Paramedics arrived at his residence with a sense of routine, preparing for what should have been a straightforward retrieval. Upon entering the dimly lit living room, their expectations were quickly overturned. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, only broken by the faint hum of an old refrigerator. It was there, amidst the ordinary clutter of household life, that the paramedics noticed something amiss: a spatter of blood on the wallpaper. This was no natural death. Their eyes traced the pattern of droplets to their source. Robert Kim lay slumped in his favorite armchair, a small, dark entrance wound at the back of his head betraying the truth. With this revelation, the scene transformed from one of domestic peace to a potential crime scene. The paramedics' initial assumption was dismissed in an instant as they swiftly radioed for law enforcement support. Detectives arrived shortly after, their presence turning the once quiet home into a hub of forensic activity. The living room, now cordoned off with yellow tape, became a canvas for investigation. As they moved through the room methodically, one detective noted the lack of forced entry. It suggested that whoever had committed this act had been allowed in willingly, or perhaps had access that required no force at all. As they pieced together the scene, gunpowder residue around Robert's wound indicated a close-range shooting. This detail spoke volumes. This was personal. On one wall hung family photos, portraits capturing moments of happiness and kinship. Each frame now seemed to stare back ominously, as if holding secrets untold. Understanding that this tragedy might be rooted in familial ties, detectives concluded that more evidence was needed before drawing any conclusions about potential motives or suspects. They awaited further insights from the coroner's office to deepen their understanding and provide clarity on the timeline. The Gilmer City morgue received Robert's body later that night. Under sterile lights and with clinical precision, the coroner began their examination. Despite its serene appearance, Robert's body told a grim story. A single gunshot to the head had ended his life instantly. But as straightforward as it seemed, there was an anomaly. The estimated time of death did not align with David Kim's recollection when he was initially interviewed briefly by officers on scene before being released pending further inquiry. This discrepancy cast new shadows over everything they thought they knew. With this crucial information in hand, detectives understood that they needed to speak with family members immediately, particularly David Kim, whose timeline now seemed unreliable at best and suspicious at worst. As dawn broke over Las Vegas, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, detectives braced themselves for what lay ahead. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty and complexity. They were preparing not just for another day on the job, but for unraveling a mystery that would demand every ounce of their expertise and intuition. Yet despite these preparations, none could anticipate how deep this rabbit hole would go, or what truths were waiting to be uncovered beneath layers of delusion and reality intertwined. Could David Kim's fractured perception be more than mere madness? As they closed Robert's case file for now, one question lingered. What role did David truly play in this tragedy, and why? As the first light of dawn painted the Las Vegas sky in hues of orange and pink, detectives stood outside the Kim family residence, an uneasy anticipation hanging in the air. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with complexity, yet they were prepared to unravel a mystery that demanded every ounce of their expertise. David Kim's return to the scene was unexpected. He walked up the driveway with an air of detachment, his eyes scanning the familiar facade as if seeing it for the first time. Detectives approached cautiously, aware that his erratic behavior could be a window into his fractured mind. "David," one officer called out, "we need you to come with us to answer some questions." David paused, his gaze unfocused yet piercing. "I had to rescue someone," he muttered cryptically, leaving detectives bewildered. The inconsistencies in David's account were glaring. His claim of acting under alien influence contradicted evidence suggesting a more straightforward motive. The urgency to understand his mental state overshadowed hesitations about his fragile condition as they escorted him to the Gilmer police station. In the sterile confines of the interrogation room, David sat across from two seasoned detectives. His demeanor oscillated between calmness and agitation, a war within himself, manifesting in fits of incoherence intertwined with moments of clarity. "Aliens," he whispered, as if sharing a secret. "They told me he wasn't my father." The detectives exchanged glances, each silently acknowledging the complexity of discerning truth from delusion. "David," one detective leaned forward, voice steady yet probing, "can you tell us who you were trying to rescue?" His response was a tangled web of conspiracy and alternate realities, claims that Robert Kim was an imposter hiding beneath human skin. Such revelations required careful handling. They couldn't dismiss his words outright. Instead, they needed context, a psychological evaluation to decipher if David's reality was a construction of mental illness rather than malice. It became clear that delving into David's psyche was necessary to navigate this labyrinthine case. Back at the Kim family living room, detectives sat with Robert's surviving relatives. The room held echoes of happier times now overshadowed by tragedy. "We need to understand David's relationship with Robert," one detective explained gently. The family hesitated, torn between protecting their kin and revealing truths that might implicate him further. "David has always been different," his sister finally admitted, eyes cast downwards as she recounted episodes of paranoia and isolation that marked his past. These insights painted a portrait of a man struggling against unseen adversaries, real or imagined, and added layers to understanding his actions on that fateful night. The detectives realized they needed more than family accounts. They required medical records that might uncover undiagnosed issues lurking beneath the surface. As the interview concluded, new paths opened up before them, each twist and turn leading deeper into David's troubled mind. Yet despite these revelations, one question loomed larger than ever. What role did reality play in David's perception? The detectives left the home with a resolve strengthened by uncertainty. Their next step was clear: obtain access to any psychiatric evaluations or medical records that could illuminate David's mental health history. However, just as they began piecing together this fragmented puzzle, a call came through on the radio. It seemed there had been another incident involving someone claiming alien contact elsewhere in Las Vegas. The implications were chilling. Was this an isolated case or part of a broader pattern? As they headed back towards their vehicles under a sky now shrouded in gathering clouds, they knew one thing for certain: this case had just taken another unexpected turn. The evening's chill crept into Gerald Harrison's office as the detective reviewed the sparse medical records of David Kim. The room, cluttered with case files and flickering desk lamps, felt heavy with unspoken truths. Harrison's fingers tapped rhythmically against a thin manila folder, its contents underwhelming, yet foreboding. The lack of comprehensive medical history on David Kim spoke volumes, suggesting a neglect or avoidance that shrouded his mental health in mystery. "We need more than this," Harrison remarked to his partner, Detective Lee, who sat opposite him, brow furrowed in concentration. "There's a report here from years back, mentions possible schizophrenia, but nothing followed through." Lee nodded, the revelation adding weight to their pursuit of an official psychological assessment. "It's a lead," he conceded, "one that might explain his actions if we can verify it." The implications were clear. Understanding David's psychological state was crucial. With this discovery propelling them forward, the detectives ventured to Caprock Canyon Avenue. The neighborhood stood in stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within its bounds. As they moved door to door, seeking insights from those closest to Robert Kim's home, they encountered wary glances and whispered reluctance. "I don't want any trouble," one elderly neighbor muttered from behind her screen door when approached about David's behavior. "We're just trying to understand what happened," Lee reassured gently. Finally, an older man hesitated before recounting seeing David acting erratically the night of the murder. "He was pacing outside," the neighbor recalled, voice tinged with unease. muttering to himself, something about needing to protect someone. This account reinforced their need for psychological insights into David's mind, but offered no clear motive. It was another piece of a puzzle they were struggling to assemble. Next, the detectives found themselves at a local cafe, a familiar haunt for nearby residents and acquaintances of the Kims. Here, amidst the clatter of coffee cups and murmured conversations, they sought to uncover social dynamics between David and his father. Acquaintances were hesitant. The stigma of associating with someone implicated in such a crime loomed large. Yet one individual spoke up nervously over a steaming mug of coffee. David always talked about cosmic dangers, he revealed with a wary glance around. Said he had to be vigilant against things others couldn't see. This statement added credibility to David's delusional claims, a narrative woven with paranoia and perceived threats from beyond. It bolstered detectives' plans for deeper psychological evaluations, necessary to untangle reality from delusion in this perplexing case. As they left the cafe, a sense of urgency underscored their steps. They needed definitive answers that could only come from probing deeper into David's mental health history. However, just as they contemplated their next move, Harrison's phone rang sharply in his pocket. A call from dispatch that would shift their focus abruptly. "There's been another incident," came the crackling voice through the line. Someone else claiming alien contact, this time at the other end of town. The detectives exchanged glances, laden with foreboding questions. Was this truly an isolated delusion, or were these incidents part of something larger? As they hurried back towards their vehicle under darkening skies, the mystery deepened around them, a suspenseful shadow looming over every unanswered question. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with potential danger, each twist promising revelations yet unseen. The news of another incident involving someone else claiming alien contact was fresh in the detectives' minds as they attended a hastily convened neighborhood meeting at the Caprock Canyon Community Center. The room buzzed with nervous chatter. Fear had seeped into the heart of the community, fed by swirling rumors of mental illness and alien influences, tangling fact with fiction in a web of panic. The community leader, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patel, stood at the front, her voice quivering with authority as she called for calm. "We've always known David was different," she admitted, a hush falling over the crowd. Her words confirmed a long-standing unease that many had harbored but never voiced. "He talked of things, strange things," she continued, hinting at past concerns about his mental health. This acknowledgement only fanned the flames of anxiety. Detective Harrison could see the situation escalating and knew they needed to manage public perceptions swiftly. Encouraging Mrs. Patel to focus on community solidarity, he prepared to address the crowd himself. "We need your cooperation," he said, his voice steady yet firm. "The police are committed to getting to the bottom of this, but we ask for your patience and discretion." With these words, Harrison hoped to stem the tide of speculation and reinforce trust in their investigation. The media frenzy outside the Gilmer police station was relentless, and as officers prepared for a family press conference, they braced for probing questions designed more to sensationalize than elucidate. Detective Lee took center stage alongside Robert Kim's remaining family members, each face drawn tight with tension. "Can you confirm if aliens were involved?" shouted a reporter from the back, eager to seize on any sensational angle. The question hung in the air like an unwanted guest. "Our focus is on understanding David's mental health," Lee replied carefully, steering attention back to reality. The press conference was tense. Public assumptions shaped by incomplete information were evident, highlighting the need for accuracy in portraying David's motives. As questions persisted about alien influences in Robert Kim's death, Lee assured that no definitive conclusions were drawn yet and reiterated their commitment to thorough investigation, including mental health assessments that would clarify David's actions. Following the press conference, Harrison and Lee drove to meet Dr. Eliza Carter, David's former therapist. Her office was a haven of calm amidst chaos, shelves lined with books on psychology and wellness. "I want to help," Dr. Carter said earnestly when they explained their need for insights into David's mental evolution. But confidentiality binds me. Yet she knew this was more than professional ethics. It was about preventing further tragedy. After careful consideration, Dr. Carter shared what she could. David often spoke of fears, imaginary threats he believed could manifest into real dangers. Her words painted a chilling picture of a mind besieged by delusions that blurred lines between imagination and reality. This revelation prompted Harrison to request deeper forensic psychological inquiry into David's case history, an essential step in unraveling whether these delusions were untreated symptoms or catalysts for violence. As they left her office, Harrison's phone buzzed ominously. A message from dispatch about another disturbing development in Las Vegas related to alien claims. The implications were grave. Was this part of a broader pattern or isolated incidents sparking copycat phenomena? The detectives exchanged looks heavy with unspoken concern as they considered their next move under rapidly darkening skies. A suspenseful shadow stretching over everything they thought they knew about Robert Kim's murder and David's fractured psyche. The atmosphere in the Gilmer facility for psychological assessment was clinical, yet tinged with an air of expectancy as forensic psychologists prepared to evaluate David Kim. The room was sterile, devoid of distractions, aiming to coax clarity from chaos. Dr. Eliza Carter, observing through a one-way mirror, noted David's unresponsiveness. His eyes darted around the room as if scanning for unseen threats. "He's not engaging," another psychologist murmured, noting David's erratic behavior, atypical even in such assessments. His mutterings about aliens and imposters were consistent with delusions, yet today he seemed trapped within a cocoon of silence. The team worked methodically, undeterred by the lack of immediate breakthrough. Hours passed in diligent observation until Dr. Carter finally intervened, introducing stimuli that prompted subtle reactions from David. "We need to consider schizophrenia," she concluded, her voice carrying the weight of professional certainty. The diagnosis aligned his actions with chronic delusional disorder, painting a picture of a mind at war with itself. This revelation made the case for potential adjustments in charges unavoidable. With this new understanding, the legal implications were clear. David's actions were driven by untreated mental illness rather than malice. The transition to the public defender's office was swift and necessary. Here, David's legal counsel gathered around a cluttered table, grappling with how to integrate this diagnosis into their defense strategy. The absence of comprehensive historical data posed a formidable barrier. "Without full medical records, our argument lacks solidity," the lead counselor articulated, frustration evident in his tone. Yet as they combed through documents and analysis, a glimmer of hope emerged, a potential plea of insanity based on newfound insights. "This could change everything," another attorney added cautiously. The discovery allowed them to deliberate on next legal steps with renewed vigor, contemplating how best to present this during trial. As discussions unfolded in the public defender's office, across town at the district attorney's office, prosecutors wrestled with incorporating mental health evaluations into their case strategy. The severity of Robert Kim's murder weighed heavily on their minds. How do we balance mental illness against such a heinous crime? One prosecutor questioned aloud, voicing a concern shared by all present. The complexity lay in questioning mainstream motives when faced with such severe allegations. Yet, as they reviewed psychological assessments provided by Dr. Carter and her team, it became apparent that these findings could be a game changer. "We have to consider how this impacts our approach," another prosecutor acknowledged reluctantly. The decision was not straightforward. It required navigating both legal and ethical terrains carefully. They formulated strategies that would influence final judicial recommendations on David's case, a task fraught with moral dilemmas and uncertainties. Back at the Gilmer facility, as dusk settled outside the window pane, David remained isolated yet pivotal in these deliberations, his fate hanging precariously between law and empathy. As the legal teams wrapped up their considerations for the day, one truth lingered. David's reality was fractured long before this tragic event unfolded. Each team knew their decisions would ripple beyond courtroom walls into broader societal discussions about mental health and justice. In the quiet aftermath of these intense deliberations, an unsettling question arose. Could more have been done earlier to prevent such tragedy? It left an indelible mark, a chilling realization that justice might never fully reconcile with truth when shaped by minds untethered from reality.